Hello again, and welcome back to Illegally Cited. This is Jesse, and I am back for another bonus video update because yesterday, as I'm recording this, we had Sony's kind of a spring non E3, whatever you want to call it, um, PlayStation Showcase event. And I thought about streaming it, I thought about recording it. But OBS has been giving me some issues lately, and I just really didn't know that I wanted to deal with it. So here we go. I'm just going to go through my thoughts on what was announced, some just general thoughts, and also some accessibility thoughts, because there definitely are a few things that I want to bring up regarding accessibility. So I just have an article up here just so I can kind of remember. Um, I have my article on my phone here so I can look up and just remember actually what was announced because they did announce a lot. The presentation was a little bit over an hour, and I would say they had a pretty solid lineup of titles. Would I call it mind blowing? No. Would I call it quite good? Yeah, actually, I think I would. I would probably give it just minor spoilers. I'd probably give their presentation maybe a B, maybe a 7 out of 10. 6 to 7. Well, yeah, maybe we'll stick to about a 7. So the first thing before we get into the actual showcase itself, the one thing, or there's a couple things that I want to just mention about Sony right now. Um, as far as accessibility goes, I really like, at least base-wise, where they are with the PlayStation 5. Their screen reader is much, much better than it ever was in the PlayStation 4. If you are looking at getting The Last of Us Part 1 or 2, don't even bother with the PlayStation 4. Yeah, the PS4 is cheaper probably, but honestly, you're gonna regret it because the PS5 will play the PS4 games, and the especially the Last of Us Part 1 remaster that has the accessibility features, you need the PS5. And there are so many points on the PlayStation 4 where if you have the screen reader on, you'll read a top level menu, and anytime you go into pretty much any submenu, it just says text to speech not available here. And it makes me very, very sad. Um, you're going to get a much fuller screen reader experience on the PlayStation 5. So if you're looking at Sony, go PS5. Don't even bother with the PS4 at this point, I would say. Especially for accessibility, if you're blind or low vision. That being said, as good as the screen reader is, there's one little thing that Sony really needs to do, and I just don't understand why they don't do it. Because I know many of us have brought it up to them over the past couple of years now, is the screen reader works fine, but there are many areas on the dashboard, on the PlayStation Store, when you're browsing the store on the console, and even in the mobile apps, the PlayStation Mobile iOS app. It's not even anything they have to really code for or develop. HTML has had this in HTML forever. And it's called a little thing called an alt tag, alt text. There are many graphics and images that are not labeled. So the screen reader will technically kind of try to read them, but it might say some weird gibberish. It might say unlabeled image. It might say nothing, but you'll know that it kind of went somewhere. They really need to hammer home the consistency of adding alternative text to their images. And like I said, that's just built right into HTML. It's already there. Um, you know that their platform already has, even if it's something different than HTML. Some of their images have them, so obviously they do support alt text. So I really, really wish that Sony would make that more of a priority. Because it's great and all that we have the screen reader, but if it's just reading gibberish, well, then it's still not very easy to use. So that's my main accessibility complaint for like the Sony and their console, the PlayStation platform. I do have one other nitpick about the Sony event yesterday, the showcase. Now on YouTube, I watched it on YouTube because it was ad free, and who knows if I was going to get ads interrupted during Twitch. So I watched it on YouTube because I have YouTube Premium, and it was fine. Now, before the presentation, I looked on their channel, and it showed two streams, a regular English stream and an English subtitled stream. There was no third English stream, which I really wish there should have been. There was no English audio described stream. And a lot more big companies have done this in recent years. Microsoft, Ubisoft. I know there's been a couple of other ones that have done it multiple times. So, come on, Sony. You keep talking about accessibility. Let's make this happen. Because, even when you're looking at, at the end of it, a trailer, and they tell you the name of the game and the release date, sometimes it goes by super fast, or it's in such a weird font that I can't read it quick enough. I want to be able to have access to that information right away, just like everybody else. Not to mention, if you're totally blind, being able to enjoy what's in the trailers. So, next time you do an event, Sony, come on, especially a big one like this. This isn't just like a 10, 15 minute snippet of something. This was like a full hour plus worth of content. Let's add some audio description, please. But like I said, otherwise I like the event. The one thing that I will say that it did well is, they did a little teaser thing to start with, and then you had one of the head of Sony talk for maybe like a minute or two, and that's it. And pretty much the whole rest of it was just game trailers, announcements, and a little bit of him talking at the end, which I'll get to in a bit. It wasn't just a lot of fluff. It wasn't just a lot of people trying to make corny jokes or waste time doing stuff. It was pretty much all about the games. And I appreciate that. So what did they announce? Well, before we get into the games, though, I do want to mention one more thing about accessibility. At the very end, they were kind of doing like the highlight of, hey, this is what everything that we covered. Kind of a montage. And that was the only time, and it was literally probably 2 to 3 seconds tops, where they showed the Project Leonardo adaptive controller for the PlayStation. We still don't have a price. We still don't have a release date. And I get the frustration. If you're a Sony fan and you want to invest in the PlayStation ecosystem, but you have a disability where you need that type of controller, when are you going to be able to do it? When are you going to be able to? Are you going to be able to invest in this controller? I hope it's at least reasonably priced, comparative maybe to the Microsoft adaptive controller. We don't know anything about the price or release date. They just said, stay tuned. So they did acknowledge it, but not even with any dialogue. Literally just a 2-second video clip of showing the controller, and that's it. So I know some people will be disappointed about that. Anyway, on to the games and announcements. Of course, we got to start with the big one. We knew it was going to be there, and I was pretty sure it was going to be the finale, Spider-Man 2. I gotta say, this looks incredible, and I really, really want to know if or what accessibility. I mean, Spider-Man 1 had some. Miles Morales had even more, and they put it retroactively back in the remaster of Spider-Man. So I wonder what more accessibility features are going to be in Spider-Man 2 because, whoo, boy howdy, Spider-Man 2 looks pretty good. They did a big story section. It was about a, 10, 12 minute gameplay demo. I mean, it was gameplay. A lot of it was sort of like a scripted action scene, set piece, but it was cool. You were swinging through the city. You were swinging over water, jumping and like taking down jet skis. You were fighting dudes, and it looks like you're going to be going back and forth between Spider-Man, who actually has the symbiote suit. So Spider-Man's going all aggro and just like all just crazy, and then you have Miles Morales, and you're going back and forth between them. So it's not a co-op game, despite what people maybe infer from that. I guess Insomniac last week had said, no, this is not a cooperative game. It is a single-player story, but you are going to be able to jump back and forth between Miles and Peter. And as quickly, like, remember when I was so impressed when Spider-Man Miles Morales on the PS5 came out? I mean, you started the game and literally you hit start and you were in the city. So I have a feeling there's not going to be any loading times. It's just going to be super fast. I mean, the game looked fluid. It looked and sounded amazing. I wish that it would come to PC at the same time, but it's not. So it'll be on the PS5. But that, whatever, that's fine. Gives me something to play on my PS5 again. I'm sure there'll be some DualSense stuff in there, hopefully. And I really hope that there's accessibility for it, especially more for blind and low vision players, because it looks really good. Like, this is a huge single player game that looks pretty amazing. And then we have the rumored Metal Gear Solid 3. They're remaking it from the ground up. Now, here's the other problem that I had with Sony, and this is not just them. What I really have, any of these showcases, state of plays, directs, whatever you want to call them, so many of these trailers are presented like a movie. No gameplay, it's all story cutscene. And that's always been my big beef. I want to see, these are games. They're not movies. They're not TV series. They're games. Show us some gameplay. Or when they say, oh, our first gameplay reveal trailer, and it's like a minute long trailer, and it's like 40 or 50 to 55 seconds of cutscene, and maybe a 5-second scene of somebody walking through an environment. See, that's gameplay. No, you idiot. That doesn't count. I hate that. When they stretch and say, this is a gameplay trailer. I'm like, yeah, no, it isn't. In-engine, maybe. Gameplay, no. But we do have, not only do we get I don't know when it's coming, but we're getting a Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Basically, not even a remaster, like a rebuild thing. But later this year, we're getting a Metal Gear Solid, I forget what they call it, like Master Collection, I think they're calling it, where it's Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3, and I didn't even realize it until I read something on Twitter last night, they're also including the original Metal Gears, so it's like the MSX games, Metal Gear 1 and 2, and there might even be one other one in there, so there's like 4 to 6 titles in this, and this is the Master Collection Part 1, they said. So that would definitely infer to me that we're getting more Metal Gear later. So if you're into Metal Gear, it is coming to Sony, and I believe a lot of it is also coming to other platforms. So if you want to get it on Xbox or PC, I don't know if the remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 is coming to other platforms, but I'm pretty sure the retro or the collection is. So be interesting to see what that's going to be like. They did announce a another long rumored device, which I don't fully understand the purpose of. This Project Q, and they didn't talk about any details. Again, this was at the very end when they were just wrapping up, and there were a couple of announcements. And this Project Q is kind of like a Steam Deck size, like an 8-inch handheld, and it has all the functionality of a DualSense controller apparently, but it's just meant for streaming from PS5. Now, what I don't know is it only streaming PS5 in your home if you are on the same network? Or if I have internet, let's say I'm at, out in a hotel somewhere, or I go visit my family at home or something, and if they have good enough internet, could I then like remote into my PS5, in a totally different location and play remotely from there? And the reason I wonder why, I don't know really who this is for. I mean, yes, the main thing is you do get the DualSense functionality. That's cool because if a game supports it well, that is a nice thing to have. But literally, I've been seeing a lot of things on social media lately where they just released the PlayStation version of the Backbone controller for Android. I guess it's been on iOS for a while, but for Android. And these are controllers that you can snap to a smartphone, and you can use the PlayStation. Like you can remotely control a PlayStation from your smartphone. So we don't have a price or a release date for this Project Q. I mean, I would hope that it would be around maybe $100, 150 at the very max. I mean, what does a DualSense controller cost? Probably 80, $90. Yeah, you got a screen, you got the networking, you got a little bit of extra stuff in there. But if it's like you're not playing anything locally, if it's all for streaming, you can't charge a lot for it. At least you shouldn't. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's cool. I don't know. Um, we'll just have to see, I guess. Again, they probably spent 15, 20 seconds on it tops. That's all we know. Assassin's Creed Mirage, last year or early this year, I forget even when, Ubisoft is seeming to go all in on the Assassin's Creed thing. I don't even know. They have like 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 Assassin's Creed things coming up here, which I don't think is a good idea. Yeah, Assassin's Creed is popular, but look at what Activision does when they whore out all their franchises. They killed Guitar Hero, they killed Tony Hawk, they're starting to kill Call of Duty. Like, you gotta diversify and not just like release 14, I mean, that's even movies. Like, that's why I've fallen so far behind on Marvel and Star Wars, because every 2 minutes they're releasing another Star Wars movie or series or another Marvel movie or series. I'm just like, I like them, but I can't. The barrage that you're doing them, I can't do it. But Mirage seems to be taking it more back to the traditional stealthy Assassin's Creed, like maybe the first 2 or 3 titles. Because things like Valhalla and later in the series, they became more like actual open world RPGs. They were very different from the first few Assassin's Creed games. So that is coming out, I guess, in October this year. Um, I don't know. I'm not. I mean, I'm curious because Ubisoft is doing stuff with accessibility, so I'm curious what accessibility stuff they might have for the game. But honestly, I'm not all that like. If I were able to get a code or something, especially to look at the accessibility, or if I find out something amazing with accessibility is happening, yeah, I'll check it out. But I'm not super excited, really, for Assassin's Creed right now. What I am intrigued about, Alan Wake 2. Now, they called this a gameplay trailer, and this was that example of they had this like minute and a half long trailer. Looked good. Like, I love the story part. Um, but they just showed this like slow motion or like a little tiny bit toward the end of like, oh, here's this third person shot of, in front of a door. Um, and then a couple of, like little clips to, jump to here, jump to here. Um, but I love the original Alan Wake. I played that on the Xbox 360 and played it again on the PC. It was a really cool game. And they're going for more of a survival horror type. Like the original was kind of more. It was horror, but it was almost kind of like a more third person action, like Max Payne type of game. But yeah, Alan Wake 2 is coming out on was it October 17th, just in time for Halloween, which is perfect. And that is also coming to multiple platforms. It's not just a Sony thing. I will most likely pick that up on the PC. Very much looking forward to seeing what Alan Wake is, and I want to see more gameplay. For sure. Final Fantasy 16. I'm torn on this because I've seen it sort of happening over the last few versions. I want to say starting with 12 or 13, and I have not really played any of them. I remember watching my friends; they're huge into Final Fantasy, or as I used to call it, menu fantasy, because I don't really like turn-based games. I want to control my character. I want to fight. I don't want to select attacks from a menu. I mean, I can use Windows or Excel or whatever. Um, I don't want to do that when I'm playing a game. But the last few versions have kind of been getting a little bit more real time and actiony. And from what it sounds like, 16 is actually. I've heard the phrase "devil may cry" said a few times, which kind of intrigues me. So that means it's pretty actiony. Um, their stories are complete ridiculous nonsense, so who knows about that. Um, but real time gameplay, and that could be interesting. But I don't know if there's going to be any like low vision accessibility or blind accessibility. Somehow I sort of doubt it because a lot of the Japanese developers right now really haven't caught on as much. Although they're starting to. I'll give Capcom credit with their Street Fighter 6, as we talked about before. But there has been some hubbub with Final Fantasy 16 regarding accessibility. So apparently you have these like equipable items. I forget if they're like rings or pendants or something, and they give you certain like perks or like you automate certain types of actions. And the problem with doing that is if you want to customize your character, but let's say you need some of these actions automated because you have, let's say, a mobility impairment and you can't, you need that to be able to play the game, that should be an accessibility option that you can toggle because now you can't customize your character near as much as anyone else because you need that basically assist mode tied to an equipable item. Um, so you can't, diversify your character more. You can't customize your character more. And I totally get that frustration because it's like, oh, I want to have this, and this perk, But I can't, because if I don't have this other thing equipped, I'm unable to play the game. That would be like having a text-to-speech or high contrast thing only tied to an equipable item, and if I chose to keep that, I wouldn't be able to equip other things. And so, having that as an option under like an accessibility menu or something, I see their frustration with that, and I can totally respect where they're coming from there. So I'm glad that it's there, but at the same, that it's at least an item, but I really, really don't think that's the right way to do it. So that's coming out in late June. I don't know. I mean, like I said, if I somehow can get a code, or if it goes on sale, or if it gets really, really good reviews, or if there just so happens to be a lot of accessibility, maybe I'll check it out. But again, it's one of those that I'm not gonna. There's so many things out in June already. Unless there's something really killer about it, it's not something I'm gonna check out right away. Dragon's Dogma 2. Action RPG. I played a little bit of the first one, and I need to play the remaster that they did for it. That came out like a couple years ago, I think. Because I remember playing the original, and I thought it was sort of okay. I see what people liked about it, but it just something about it felt like a little bit off or a little bit jank. I do want to. I have not tried the remastered version, and I really do, because a lot of people love this game. And the second one actually looked pretty solid. Again, action RPG, focused on fighting a lot of big creatures and stuff. Looks promising. I'm not sure when that is coming out. Let me see if it says here. Okay, so yeah, we don't know anything about a release date yet. Now, this was a surprise I didn't see coming at all. Bungie had teased a new marathon game. Again, no gameplay, just like a really brightly colored, animated, weird, trippy trailer. Announcement teaser. But it, unfortunately, from what we heard since, it's not going to be like a traditional first-person shooter, story-based reboot or sequel. They're calling it an extraction shooter, which I'm trying to think of how to explain, but it seems something like, you go in, you do a mission. It kind of has. It seems like it has this ongoing games as a service model, potentially, which it's not really what I'm looking for. I would be totally down with a new single player marathon game. I remember playing. I never, because the problem with marathon is no one really played it, because it was one of the few games that was on a Mac back in the day. But I played the Marathon Durando port that they did on the Xbox 360, the Xbox Live Arcade, and that was pretty neat. So I am curious. I'm definitely curious to see what this extraction shooter version is going to be. Don't know when it's coming. We didn't get any gameplay, so probably it's a ways out. But I'm curious. God, Street Fighter 6 is coming out within like a week or two tops. So, like, was it June 2nd? That's insane. So they did another little story trailer thingy with it. Again, I've said this in other videos. I really respect what they're doing during the actual fight gameplay with all the audio and low vision contrast options. But I really hope there's text-to-speech for menus and the world tour mode. Because at least in the demo, there was a lot of text settings and menus. And I want to be able to take advantage of all those training and tutorials just like everybody else if they're text. But we haven't heard anything new about that type of feature, so I'm kind of losing hope on that. It'll still probably be a really great game, but it's going to be one of those that either I will wait and see what everyone else thinks about it, especially around accessibility, and maybe I'll pick it up on sale. Because you know that there's going to be a re-release or a ultimate or a Street Fighter Super Mega Ultra Hyper Fighting Super Deluxe Mega. You know, Capcom loves to re-release their Street Fighter games. You know, how many times can we release Street Fighter 2? Like 8 times. Um, so, of course, there's going to be a beefier version, even if I do wait a little bit. But, you know, we'll see. Maybe I will pick it up too. You never know. But I'm very intrigued. Like, the gameplay actually looks really cool. The fighting itself looks great. Haven Studio. This is Jade Raymond. She used to work at Ubisoft. And that's what they kicked off with, is that their studio, again, not real gameplay, but it seemed to be this like heist type of game, like maybe a 3 or 4 player heist game. And it kind of to me looked a heck of a lot like Watch Dogs. Kind of had this near future vibe to it, really sort of techy and stuff like that. Don't know much more about that. I mean, the art style looked fine. Not quite sure what the gameplay is going to be, but it looked interesting. The Talos Principle 2. Now this is, I recorded a video, haven't unlocked it for you guys yet, but I recently recorded a video for the original Talos Principle, and there's 2 games that I always got mixed up. There's the Talos Principle, and I'm trying to remember the name of the other one. And I can't remember the name of the other one. But they're first-person puzzle games. One is more of like a Portal type of game where you're in like these test chambers. And then the Talos Principle was more like you're out in these like they're test chambers, but they're out more in like this temple wilderness. They're really nice looking games, and they're pretty challenging. But we're getting, I guess, the Talos Principle 2, which came out of nowhere. I did not know that was even in development. Now here's a weird one. Square Enix, the Final Fantasy people, are also making a game called Foam Stars, Foam, which basically is a PlayStation version of Splatoon, as far as I can tell. It had, you were just shooting all these like weird, you were kind of skateboarding on this foamy stuff with a sword, and you were shooting like foam, and it seems like a weird kind of a Sony take on Splatoon, which, you know, is not necessarily a bad thing, because Splatoon is pretty neat, but it just really gave me a lot of vibes to that Splatoon series. And they did show some gameplay for that, so kudos to that. I mean, at least we've seen, it's a third person type of thing, so I'm glad we actually got to see some gameplay. The Plucky Squire. This looked really kind of neat. When I was watching it, I was sort of wondering how easy it would be for me to see some of the stuff, just due to the art style and the angles of things. But it's a really neat, like, animated type of game where you're in 2 worlds. You're in like a 2D RPG, action RPG adventure thingy on like a book. So it's like you're in this storybook type of environment. But then you go outside of the book into a 3D. So that is 2D. But then you go into the real world and you're tiny and you're in 3D and you're seamlessly kind of going from like 2D to 3D. And there's these two, the big 3D world and the 2D world, and I don't know how they how they interact with each other or whatever, but it looked really neat. I'm kind of curious to see what that's going to be like. The Plucky Squire. Not sure when that is coming out. No, I don't think we have a release date for that. Phantom Blade Zero. This actually looked kind of neat. The only thing that I'm not really sure, so it's a third-person action game, but I don't know if it plays. I mean, it really was giving me some Ninja Gaiden vibes, some Team Ninja 3D Ninja Gaiden vibes, which is a good thing. But it's so hard to tell, is it really actiony combat like in Ninja Gaiden? Is it more Dark Soulsy because everyone is going so hardcore for the Dark Souls type games these days? Are they just not showing QuickTime events, and are there a lot of QuickTime events mixed in with this? I'm really hoping that it's more like Ninja Gaiden, because Ninja Gaiden, especially the first game, two was pretty good. Three was, they just kept getting worse. But like, I remember when the original Ninja Gaiden came out on the original Xbox, and it was toward the end of that system's life, but we were just stunned at how good, like, that game looked incredible for the system that thing was on. I covered it on my channel actually quite a while ago, but it is a really fast-paced, skill-based, you gotta block, you gotta dodge. Um, yeah, I mean, they showed a lot of gameplay for that, and it looked good. Very curious to learn more about what that's gonna be. Ghost Runner 2. I don't remember if I covered the first game. I remember playing it on Steam. I remember trying it when Riley was still up here. And it was this fast paced, like, it was a first person shooter slash melee game, but it had a lot of like parkour and wall running and just really crazy stuff. I was terrible at it. It looked cool, but I was bad at it. And it had this one, the sequel seems to also have vehicles. So there's on foot first person, and then there's vehicles somehow. That's coming out fairly soon, I think, so that could be kind of intriguing. Helldivers. Now, I don't remember what the original Helldivers was like. I don't think it was 3D. I think it was, I don't remember, like I said, I can't safely say what the other one was. But Helldivers 2 seems to be like a third person. It almost gave me like some Starship Troopers vibe, like, because it had this like almost like a news story, almost like a parody of something you get in like a Paul Verhoeven movie, like RoboCop, or again, it just looked really weird. But I'm kind of intrigued. It looks actiony, and I don't know if it's primarily multiplayer or if it's single player, but I do want to learn more. Sword of the Sea. This one really caught my attention because it's from the makers of Abzu. And Abzu was a little, very colorful game, really kind of a Zen type of game, that reminded me a lot of Journey, another game that I really, really like. And Abzu, I played Abzu at a time where I was going through some stuff. It was like early 2017, I still remember. And that game really got me through about a month and a half of just pure crap. That game really helped me a lot. But this one, it kind of looks more Journey-esque and maybe a little more actiony, but I don't know. I mean, it's bright, it's colorful, and that's the thing that I really noticed with a lot of these games. Yeah, we get some that are focused on realism and stuff like that, but so many more games now, thankfully, are going for like a unique art style. Like, hey, let's make it look like a cartoon. Let's make it look like a coloring book. Let's make it look like a painting. Let's make it look like a 1930s cartoon. Use this power for more than just grays and browns and realism. I love it. And I really hope that they start using, especially with things like what or not Breath of the Wild, but like what Zelda is doing, Tears of the Kingdom. I want to see more than just graphic focus. I want to see games that, like, look at what Nintendo was able to do with their physics on a 2017 underpowered system. Imagine if they actually put some effort into actual gameplay design and mechanics over just graphics. You could do some crazy stuff in a lot of these different types of genres. So I hope that kind of wakes up the industry. But I will say, um, Sword of the Sea is very intriguing. I believe that's a multi platform thing too. So really do want to see what that's like. They did have a few PlayStation VR titles, although they only had like 3 or 4. Really, the presentation did not do anything to make me really want a PlayStation VR 2. If I got one, like if somebody gave me one, absolutely I would take it and I would play it. But do I want to spend several $100s for kind of a really small library and no backwards compatibility for the original PlayStation VR titles? No, I really don't. If it were backwards compatible with everything with PSVR 1, yeah, then maybe. But I think they really shot themselves in the foot by not including backwards compatibility and not letting you also use it with your PC. You can only use it with your PS5. And that's a huge bummer. But they did announce a Resident Evil 4 VR mode coming out later. And I gotta admit, that would be insane. Just going through that village scene alone in first person in VR like that with the chainsaw guy chasing you would be terrifying. It looked cool. Um, Five Nights at Freddy's, they're still doing those. And this is another VR game. It's your kind of cheap jump scare type of thing. I was mildly interested when the first game came out, but then I just quickly lost interest. If you're into that, cool. And then they did an Arizona Sunshine sequel. I tried Arizona Sunshine, the original, on the Oculus Rift. And, it was a first person shooter zombie game. But again, I had so much trouble seeing different things in the environment or aiming my gun because you really had to make shots count. Because you had to aim down the sights. I mean, this one just seems to be taking up the goofiness to another level, which part of me is sort of amused, but part of me thinks that they're trying too hard. I'm not really gonna play it. Like I said, I would love to try it, but I'm not gonna buy a PSVR 2 for it. And even if I had one, like I said, I have a feeling that I would have trouble with some of the shooting and like visual mechanics of it. They did have another first-person shooter for PlayStation VR. It's not in the order of this list here, but I can't remember what it was. More like a military type of shooter. When I get to it, I'll point it out again. But I don't know. I mean, it looked kind of neat. But again, not being on a flat screen, having to aim down the sights and everything. As much as I love first-person shooters, it might be one that I would have trouble with. And then they finally released, of course, Beat Saber, because you have to have Beat Saber on a virtual reality platform. So that's finally there. And they announced a Queen song pack, which is pretty cool because Queen's great. Queen is a pretty great band. So yeah, I mean, that's really all they announced for PlayStation VR 2. Doesn't give me a whole lot. I mean, yes, they're supporting it, but I mean, the releases are kind of a trickle. And without that backwards compatibility and stuff, and even of ports. A lot of stuff that is coming or has come out are ports, but they even need more, I think. I don't know how successful this thing is going to be long term. Never, I don't know what kind of game this is. It's got a really nice art style. It's like this lady and this weird wolf thing. It seems to kind of be going for the like, oh, the sad animation vibe where your creature gets hurt or killed and then you go out and whatever. Really nice looking game. I guess would be more of like a adventure type game of some sort. I don't know. Cat Quest. um, Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh God, I didn't realize it had that subtitle. That's really bad, but in a kind of a dumb but great way. Seems to be kind of like an actiony RPG type thing. And I guess there was already a Cat's Quest, as this article says here. I didn't even know there was a Cat Quest, but apparently, it showed some on land battle stuff. It showed some going in a ship and like firing cannons at other cats. It just seems, animated, goofy fun. Like, I don't know. I mean, it might be something I'd check out. Towers of, I don't know how you say that, something or other. It seems to be kind of a action adventure type of game. I'm not quite sure what to think about it. There were a couple games in there that I don't know if they're going to be free to play, but they kind of screamed things like Genshin Impact, which again, on a base level, Genshin Impact was pretty cool. But again, I really hate all this gotcha mechanics and monetization and games as a service stuff. I just don't have time for that nonsense. And depending on how the company does it, I just don't want it, period. I'm just so done and over it already. So I don't know the Towers game. I'm not quite sure what to think of it. It'd be something that we keep an eye on. Revenant Hill. This was that 2D. Again, really neat animated art style. Kind of like a lot of silhouettes. Like, the thing where you have like a bright background and then you have like the dark silhouettes type of thing. It looked neat, but I really don't know what to think about it. I do think some of the backgrounds and stuff, there's a lot going on, and it may be a little hard to play visually unless there's some sort of like visual accessibility settings. So we'll see. Yeah, Grand Blue Fantasy. This was the one I think that really gave me some Genshin Impact sort of vibes. I don't know if it's a free to play. Okay, so yeah, this little blurb says it's been in development since 2016, but is finally coming out. Um, it's actiony, but again, it kind of just like we'll see what it is. Is it a single player? Is it multiplayer? Is it online? I don't know. But it really kind of gave me this. Oh, here's a game that could be like a live service game, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I don't know. But at least they did show some actiony gameplay, which looked mildly interesting. Ultros. This one also looked neat. It was a 2D actiony, almost maybe like a Metroid type of game, Metroidvania. This one, though, I think was even more so. There was a lot of crazy stuff happening in the backgrounds. And I don't know how easy it would be to see without some sort of being able to tone down some of the backgrounds or something. So, I mean, it might be one I'll keep an eye on. But visually, it might be a little tricky to see. Tower of Fantasy. I don't even remember what the hell this game was. Kind of like it was kind of a sci-fi-ish thing, but I don't know that we really got any Again, no real gameplay, so I don't really know. I just, that one is not ringing a bell very much. Yeah, I already talked about the PSVR. Oh, there was one more first person. I forget what the other one was. Oh yeah, we had Crossfire Sierra Squad. That was that other first person shooter military thing that I was talking about earlier. There was another one that was, I think it's coming out in July. It's another first person shooter that was sort of like more anime focused or something. Again, it looked kind of neat art style wise, but boy, that one looked like it would be really tough for me to play visually without some accessibility. So again, at least they had some stuff. But it was kind of one note. Like it's funny, everything that they've shown has been first person shooters. Like even when they were showing a couple games before, I don't remember what they were called, but I remember at their last keynote where they had PSVR stuff, there was at least one or two first person shooters. So now I like first person shooters, but again, just being in VR, unfortunately not able to play them well. Um, but I think you do need some variety because if you're not into first person shooters, you want to play something more relaxing, or you want to just explore or race or something. We need more variety too. So Concord, I don't. I guess it's some sort of multiplayer game. There was, I don't know if some of it was a little bit of gameplay snippet, but it definitely has like a sci-fi thing going on. The art style looked pretty interesting, but I really couldn't make out heads or tails of what in the heck this game was actually supposed to be, other than the whole kind of style of it. But it looked kind of interesting, but that's all I know. Immortals of Avam? I don't know if I'm saying that right. And this is kind of a neat. It was a first person shooter, but it was magic based. You were like shooting magic spells, and it was really, really glowy. There was like fiery and like glowy neon spell thing effects going everywhere. There was a game that I tried and I couldn't get into as much as I thought I would, that I wanted. I don't think I ever did a video for it. It was a game that's out on multiple platforms. I played it on PC called Lichdom Battle Mage. And it was kind of a similar type of thing where you were shooting different spells out of your hands and stuff. And this kind of seems to be another one of like those types of games, which I am intrigued. Like, nothing wrong with shooting some magic. We got a little bit of Heretic Hexen kind of vibes, but more magical. But like I said, it kind of reminded me a lot of a prettier Lichdom Battle Mage. And I think that's really about it. As I said, they did announce the Project Q handheld, and along with that, they did also announce some PlayStation earbuds. So if earbuds are more your thing, you can use that with the PS5 and the PC. Again, they're gonna announce more about it later this year, but they just kind of teased both of those pieces of hardware. We saw that tiny, tiny little snippet of the um, Project Leonardo adaptive controller that was just like an afterthought at the very, very end. So, I mean, the one thing I will say is what I like about Sony is there are some multiplayer stuff. Yes, they do seem to be a few live servicey things, but they are largely focusing on big single player type of content. Your Spider-Mans, your I mean, there's just I can't even remember. Like, there's so many that were like third person, first person, that at least looked worth a look. Um, we'll see what they are. We'll see how they're going to be. Metal Gear fans are probably going to be really happy. with those things being confirmed. We did not get a new Castlevania, unfortunately. I mean, we still have other events, so that could still come to something else, maybe. Um, so we didn't hear anything about a Castlevania. I was sort of sad that we didn't hear anything about Naughty Dog's next project. There was rumored to be a Last of Us Part 2 kind of remaster, maybe for the PS5, hopefully for the PC. Because if they can do, like, if they can add, like, the audio description like they did for The Last of Us Part 1 when they brought it to the PS5 and the PC, we definitely need to have the full story saga on PC so that, blind and other players who don't have a PS5 can get the full story. And they didn't talk, and there was nothing about The Last of Us multiplayer stuff, because if they add accessibility to that I'm very intrigued, because we saw them do excellent job with single player. But if they can figure out a way to make blind accessible third person action multiplayer, color me impressed, because I would love to see if and how they pull that off. And if anyone can do it, Naughty Dog has kind of given me a lot of faith in that area. Because boy, they blew me away when I played The Last of Us Part 2, and I was like, wow, this is smooth. This is incredible. But yeah, I mean, I know there were probably some other games that people wanted to see. I was secretly hoping maybe they would have something, maybe, like let's bring back some arcade racers, man. Let's bring back Ridge Racer. Maybe Wipeout. It was funny when they showed that, what was, that first person shooter with the vehicles, the sequel I can't remember the name of. They showed this like futuristic motorcycle flying through the air, and I'm like, are they going to do an Extreme G? That was my first. I'm like, I haven't thought of Extreme G in like 20 years. That was an original PlayStation N64 era game. It was like F-Zero, but on these futuristic motorcycles. Anybody remember Extreme G? They had Extreme G3 on the GameCube, I remember. I owned that for a little while until I sold that version, but yeah, that is the Sony event. Not bad. There are things I'm looking forward to, and I really want to learn more about accessibility on a few titles especially. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts and summary and accessibility impressions of the Sony event yesterday. We're going to wrap it up here. Enjoy the bonus video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Give it a like if you did. Follow me on Twitter at BGFH79, twitch.tv/illegally-cited, illegally-cited.com, and right here on YouTube. Until next time, I will chat with everybody again later.